The US says Russia could launch an attack on Ukraine at any point, calling the situation extremely dangerous. It comes as US Secretary of State Antony Blinken begins a trip to Ukraine and Europe that will culminate in a meeting with his Russian counterpart on Friday. The US says it wants to see if a diplomatic solution to the crisis is possible. Ukraine's Defense Minister Oleksiy Reznikov has been speaking to Hard Talk's Stephen Saka and was asked if he had a message for those at the talks.
I would say that the main message, let's show to the Kremlin that you are seriously understand all threats and you can make this invasion very expensive for them, and you can start with the sanctions on this moment, before, not after.
If they do not, will you regard that as a betrayal?
It will be very late because it will be a lot of blood in the land and it will be a lot of refugees. It will be disaster for the Europe because this war is not only east of Ukraine. This war is going in east of Europe. I'm seriously saying it.
Well, let's go live to Ukraine's capital now, Kiev, and talk to Peter Zalmayev, who is director of the Eurasia Democracy Initiative. Thank you for being on the programme. So Secretary of State Antony Blinken is now in Ukraine for talks. The US is saying the situation right now is extremely dangerous. Is that your perspective on how things are currently?
Well, it is indeed. If we go by the rhetoric of the Kremlin, it seems that Mr. Blinken is traveling to Ukraine in what is being characterized as a last sort of ditch effort at diplomacy. And I think it reflects a sense of pessimism on the part of Western capitals, including Washington, that Russia is just being very implacable in its demands and very unrealistic. And so I think what he's doing when he's coming to Ukraine, he's trying to get on the same page with Ukrainians as part of this recent strategy to not talk about Ukraine without Ukraine, to try to dissuade Mr. Zelensky, the current president, from politically persecuting and prosecuting in courts his predecessor, Mr. Poroshenko, to present a unified front and give some kind of a united message to Russia, considering that Mr. Lavrov and Putin are expecting a written reply from the West regarding its demands.
Okay, so when the defense minister of Ukraine says we need to have sanctions in place now, preemptive sanctions before any conflict begins, do you agree with that?
I agree with that, but I think it may be a case of too little too late, because when we're talking about sanctions, are we talking about the disconnecting of Russia from the SWIFT payment system? That was, economic sanctions were tried in 2014 and they didn't dissuade Putin. And SWIFT, well, Putin has had 8 years to prepare for just this eventuality. And the Nord Stream 2, that's canceling the pipeline project to Germany. The question is, will Germany go ahead with it? Germany wants to have Russian gas, etc. I think it all comes down to sending a strong message to Putin that the West will support resistance in Ukraine. Already these signs have started coming. Both the US and the UK have announced that they are sending anti-tank weapons. Lithuania has done that, and more is needed.
But I mean, Russia knows the West supports Ukraine. The US has been extremely vocal about this for weeks, as has Europe. And actually, the US and Europe are on the same page on this. What hopes do you have for these talks on Friday between the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, and President Putin?
Well, my only hope is that Vladimir Putin will finally realize that, this is not a winning strategy for him. If we're talking about a full invasion of Ukraine, this is just a non-starter, and Vladimir Putin will need hundreds of thousands of troops to do that. I do not think he's contemplating it. But I do not have many hopes that there will be absolutely no action. I think Vladimir Putin is very much intent on doing something. It could be a land corridor on the southern part of eastern Ukraine to try to get access of fresh water to the Crimea. It could be trying to reclaim the rest of the territory of the Donbass. And it could be another slew of cyber attacks. Not only against Ukraine, but against Western countries as well. And in that case, the West will have to decide what exactly constitutes an action that will have to invite sanctions, and that will be kind of a gray zone in which Vladimir Putin likes to operate.
Okay. Peter Zalmayev, we appreciate your time. Thank you for giving us your take on that situation. And just